Hey Ben, how's it going?
It's going well. Is this the first time you've ever hosted a podcast?
Most certainly, it's the first time I'm hosting a podcast. I've done a couple of talks, but it's interesting to turn the tables. How does it feel to be on the receiving side of questions?
Usually it feels okay when I do these, but with you, I never know what you're going to ask. I think you could throw a few curveballs at me. So yeah, I'm a bit nervous.
Don't you worry, this is not a QA session that I do with my students. So I think I have a couple of questions that are coming up in my own mind, and I think those are also questions that other people might have. So for me, one of the biggest questions is, how do you, as someone working in recruitment, see the evolution and the change in the Salesforce ecosystem taking place?
Oh, it's a big question. There's a few things that I think there's some really great things that I see that are happening, and some things that frustrate me a little bit. Let's cover the good things first. I think what's been amazing for me to see through the challenges of COVID and things like that is how adaptable the Salesforce platform is, and the amount of use cases that companies have been able to utilize Salesforce for. And realistically, like, I've been very fortunate in my work because it's been really busy for us through COVID. From we had a couple of quiet months, but on the whole, we've been as busy as ever, and if not busier than most months. So that's been great to see the continued use of the platform. The scale of the platform just continues to evolve. Some of the things that I'm a little bit frustrated by are the amount of the lack of opportunities for junior people, and this is something I talk about a lot. But I think there's a lot of senior people in the market now, and people are aspiring to be certified technical architects and going on that journey. But there's also a lot of people that are trying to get a hold in the market and don't get necessarily the amount of opportunities that I'd like to see them given.
Yeah. Okay. So let's actually continue talking a little bit about newer people joining the ecosystem. And I think we all have seen the numbers Salesforce is projecting, with like a couple of million new jobs coming up in the next 3 to 4 years. So how do you see this working out? I mean, we're running somewhat in a shortage.
Well, I mean, yes, I guess if we follow those stats, I guess we will have a shortage, but that isn't how I see it playing out right now. And all I can comment on is what's right in front of us, right? So I think I've probably placed under 5 people without Salesforce experience in my career, as in people that hadn't ever worked in a paid Salesforce role before. I've probably placed less than 5. I'd probably say I could probably guess like 3 in 6 years in Salesforce recruitment. And that tells me that there isn't enough opportunity for junior people. And I think realistically, companies don't come to me and say, we want a junior. Like, they will try to find that person themselves. But I read these stats all the time, but that's not how I see it playing out. I think, yes, there might be a shortage of people at more senior levels or for experience. But I could find 5 people tomorrow that want a job in Salesforce and could start like the next day. So yeah, I think the stats that we see probably are a little out of alignment with the realities of the market right now.
Yeah. Okay. So if I was a company interested to hire some more junior people, what are the things that I would be looking for, or what would you suggest to focus on instead of badges or certifications, maybe?
Yeah, I think attitude, right, and enthusiasm. Like, so if I look at the people that have been successful in like securing a junior role, it's always their attitude is the first thing that strikes me. It's just this hunger and thirst for learning. But also, if I talk about like the architects that I've worked with, they also have that hunger and thirst for learning. But they don't need to demonstrate their attitude, and they don't need to come across it with that enthusiasm that a junior does, because an enthusiasm, that's all they've got to go off of. But yeah, if I think about the people that I have helped find jobs, they've stood out because you can tell how much they want a job in Salesforce, and you can tell that they're willing to go out of their comfort zone to get it. And I think they follow, like, I'll give them instructions, like if you blog or if you document your learning journey and promote yourself online, like you'll get you'll get better results than if you don't. And the ones that do that,
Mm-hmm.
they get results, and they're enthusiastic, and they just have this energy that it makes them like seem like they'd be good people to work with. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important. Like if you haven't got experience, then all you've got to demonstrate is your attitude and your hunger. So for me, that's what really makes people stand out.
Your words make me nostalgic thinking about 2012 when I kind of started moving into the professional space in Salesforce. There wasn't Trailhead around. It was a very small ecosystem, so to say, and I was fortunate enough to work for a company with a lot of people that kind of had worked under the shadows so far in the Salesforce ecosystem, maybe on the client side, and we were hungry. I think attitude, what you're saying is certainly something to watch out for. So what is your take on this obsession of people being like 20 times certified and so on? Like I certainly have my own very strong opinion, but I would be curious about yours.
I got asked this question on the architect event we did recently with Johan and those guys. Mm-hmm. And I think like certifications to a point are valuable. Mm-hmm. As in, like, yes, if you're starting to look for a career in Salesforce, get your admin certification, because if you don't have it, it can be like a barrier to entry if you don't have it, because some companies will be like, well, they're not even certified. Like, how serious are they about their job? But then like to have 20 or 30, I don't know what's the maximum now anyone's got.
Stop counting.
Yeah, well, that's it, right? So I think that doesn't prove that you have the most experience in the Salesforce ecosystem just by having 30 certifications or 20. I think that you can't really go really super deep on all of those topics. Surely you'll know better than me, but you can't be an expert in CPQ and marketing cloud, as well as field service lightning. So just by having those certifications doesn't make you an expert. And that's what I would always encourage clients to realize. Like, it's not so much about what people have studied, it's about what they've delivered and actually how deep they can go in those different topics for the role that you require. The certified technical architect is obviously different. Like I would always encourage someone to go down that path if it's what they want to do. And obviously you have to tick certain certification check boxes to get there. So I think really my advice to anyone looking at certifications is to understand, well, why are you doing them? Is it just a marketability thing? Like, are you expecting the more search you have to be the more opportunities you get? Or is it because you just really you love learning and you want to study different things and invest your time? Then go and do it, because there's no reason not to. But yeah, in my opinion, it doesn't replace experience. What's your view?
To be honest, I think there is value in those certifications, as you say, and if someone wants to specialize in a certain aspect of the platform, it makes sense. For a developer coming up with a marketing cloud certification, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I would question that person, like, why do you bother in the first place? Why don't you go and read some design pattern books or something that helps you really improving your craft and continue on your mastery path, rather than just having something to show for,
And what was that always your? Did you when you first got into Salesforce, did you do that? Like, were you a certifications guy, or did that kind of only evolve when you saw the CTA as a path?
So here's the thing, when working on the client on the client side back in the days, like, there was not really a need, especially since I was the CRM lead for the small company I was working for. So there was no pressure. And given the shortage in the market back in 2012, the company I got hired by, Tequila, they didn't really care about my certifications, because I did the interview with them and I was asked to do some coding tests and so on. So that was sufficient enough to pass. And then I think 4 months into the job, I was like, you know what, we have certification vouchers, why don't I just do them? So I got like all 6 back in the days in like 12 days. But that also says something about the accuracy of a multiple choice test, Again, I have very strong opinions on certifications, so to say, but they're necessary when it comes to proving it.
Yeah, like I mean, I have my Salesforce admin certification, right? And I've tried twice now to get my app builder, and I failed twice.
Yeah.
And for me to ever get the app builder, I have two options. I either cheat, or I actually really study and really try and knuckle down and learn. And I'm never going to cheat, right? So actually, to get that certification, I'm going to have to invest time and studying, and because there are certain concepts in those questions that unless you've done it before, you don't know the answer, like you're just guessing. So in that case, I think that's a really good way to go after a certification, because it's actually going to teach me a lot to get it. But if it's on, like, if it's something like it's on the periphery, like, I've done Sales Cloud and Service Cloud, and now I've heard a little bit about this, so I'm going to give it a go, and I pass just because I've done it before. Like you don't have to study for it, so go and get it, right? But it's the people that go down the path of stumps and things that really invalidates the whole market. And that's the biggest problem with it. But I think if you can just pass them, and you passed 6, right? So you had foundational knowledge on all of those areas, otherwise you wouldn't pass. Then again, like, no harm in having them, or go for something that you actually really need to study and need to learn about, because then you are picking up good knowledge. But yeah, it's the other camp that really let everyone down. I think the ones that are just rushed to just crave the glory of being able to post about certification without learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And the sad truth for me is really when I have people coming into the CTA program that I coach, they all need to have system and application architect certifications. And then as soon as you start drilling down into the nitty-gritty details of what their certification should in fact cover, they very often fall short to apply that knowledge, because they've learned it on a theoretical level without necessarily reflecting about it and being able to translate that knowledge into a solution or apply that.
Yeah, that's so true. I guess that's pretty much how I've been when I've studied, like, for the app builder. I couldn't really explain it to anyone, but I think I know, because I'm passing certain like trial questions online. But it's just kind of repetitive, right? Because I'm reading, and then the question comes up, and I'm like, oh yeah, that word looks right, but there's no like depth to my knowledge. So yeah, that must be frustrating for you.
It's okay. I think it's a necessary learning exercise for my guys to realize, oh, so this is a totally different beast. But you mentioned, I can recognize it. I remember the words, but I can't necessarily explain it. So what I teach my guys is the Feinman Technique. Have you heard about Richard Feynman, the physicist? Is a crazy guy. You have to look him up. He's amazing. Was a Nobel Prize winner, a lot of it in physics. Was a bongo player, pickup artist, like, amazing guy. But he coined the technique called Feinman Technique, which is pretty much like, take a topic and try to explain it in the most simple terms. Whenever you're using a particular piece of terminology that is ingrained into the topic. So if you were to say, I'm going to use a request and response pattern with an asynchronous Apex callout, you would have to take apart Apex, you would have to take apart asynchronous, and also explain those topics. So once you're able to explain those in the most simplest terms, then that's when you really know the topic.
Yeah, it's so true. It's funny because I've been looking at Twitter a lot recently, and a lot of people on Twitter say things like, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. So and like people, it's a lot of it I'm seeing is about cryptocurrency. So obviously everyone's talking about cryptocurrency now, right? Because everyone's just crazy amounts of money being made and lost, and but so few of the people that talk about it can actually answer that question or explain what this coin does to me, like I'm a 5-year-old, and people can't do it.
I think neither the founders can.
Oh yeah. But I mean, if you asked me a question about, anything on the app builder certification, I couldn't explain it to you like you're a 5-year-old.
Yeah. I think the there's also a little bit of a flaw in the statement, hey, explain it to a 5-year-old, because as a 5-year-old, you have like different concepts and a different level of understanding of the topic. So I wouldn't even know how to explain Salesforce to a 5-year-old.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, maybe you're right.
Okay, so we spoke about certifications. We spoke about the shift in the market. So what I'm actually curious about is, what is your perception of the increase of CTAs in the market? Is it a good thing? Is it concerning?
Oh, it's like, I think it's amazing because for me, it's like so great to see people achieving their goals, and like that's like, it's, I don't think you ever see a prouder moment from a Salesforce professional online than when, you know, they are able to post on LinkedIn and Twitter about achieving that goal. And I think, you know, the market needs more good architects, and the more that we have, the more success projects and companies and the whole ecosystem will have. And I know you've made a point on some of my posts in the past, like CTA isn't a job title, and also there's very many really good architects in the market that haven't gone down the CTA path. So I think it's a huge achievement, but it's not, again, it's not the be all and end all in terms of, can you be a great architect without being a CTA? Yes, absolutely you can. I think that for me, I have noticed that there are more and more popping up, especially in Australia, where we and New Zealand, well, more so Australia. We haven't had any new ones in New Zealand recently, I think, but yeah, I think it's interesting because we are still a relatively small market here in terms of numbers, but we massively punch above our weight from a number of CTA angle. But there's still lots of opportunity for them around, and I think it's been interesting to see that evolution, because I think obviously your business has played a big role in the number of CTAs. Like, how many now is it?
We got 18, and I have one more guy sitting on Wednesday, so potentially 19 by the time this goes public.
Yeah, wow. So yeah, I mean, 18, and like in the world, I don't know the exact numbers, but yeah, I think
probably 500 at the moment.
500. Wow. So yeah, I mean, like that's increased significantly.
Maybe a little bit under 500.
Yeah, because I used to quote 300, so 500 obviously is a huge jump, but I think a lot of companies have realized that they need to start helping people on that journey and with that goal to attract people. So that's been a real shift. I think, you know, all of the partners now are looking to put in place these CTA programs or academies. I think you'd struggle to find a partner that isn't looking to do that. And that's not just the big, as you know, it's not just the big top tier partners, kind of everyone. We're seeing small, like, you know, like Yanis's company, right? Small companies with a CTA. You've got Maverick here, relatively small. They've got 2 CTAs. You've got CloudWorks here, and they've got a CTA. So it's not about being a huge company now. I think you can be a smaller business and still attract CTAs, and then that helps with your retention of other staff and your attraction to other staff. But that's a question I had for you actually. Is you know, everyone's looking to put in place these CTA academies. Can that actually be done if you don't have a CTA? Like, if you what's the kind of core requirements to be able to put together and establish a successful CTA academy for a partner?
Okay, so I think we need to take the question apart, because if you think about becoming a CTA, there are different elements to it. The review board being one of them. And the way I like to put it with my guys is, my job is to help you excel in your role, and as a result, you have better chances and a high likelihood of passing the exam. Okay, I think as a partner, even as a smaller partner, you can most certainly help you guys excelling in their role, becoming a better architect, and that doesn't necessarily require having a CTA on staff who can actually run the show. But when it comes to the specifics of the exam, I think it is not necessarily absolutely essential, but I think having a CTA to really guide the individual, this is what the process looks like, those are the specific expectations, makes certainly different and there are study groups out there. There are some people mentoring. I do the coaching program. So there's an opportunity also for companies, if they don't have a CTA, to run the internal academy efforts entirely, at least to kind of initiate the progress and take people on a journey, getting them as far as they can, potentially sending them to the board, and then kind of getting the results and refining, or seeking outside help. But I said this before, like trying to explain to someone the board, if you've never said it yourself, regardless if you have passed or failed, it's like as a blind man trying to explain the color red.
Yeah. So true.
You have an idea of the concept, but you're never really getting close to it, except if you were obviously blinded at some point after having been around for a while.
Sure. So what about then, like, people, because we're seeing a lot of people, I think Johan and his crew really, maybe they didn't start it, but they really, they nailed the whole like buddy system, right? So they took it to the next level. So you had Jakob, Johan, Bibu, like these guys every single morning did a mock review. Like they took
Fabulous
it to the
four.
Yeah, I don't know who was the fourth. I don't know who the fourth was, but yeah, maybe we shouldn't say the fourth, because I don't know if that's. I've just outed them all as being in the four. I don't know who the fourth was, but yeah, other people are now looking to do that, right? So people I know are getting in pairs, but if they haven't if they've never sat a review board, and they don't have someone like you, or they've not got that kind of knowledge around actually what is a realistic scenario, where do you reckon they can find that kind of info? Is there stuff out there?
I mean, there are plenty of resources out there where you can kind of look up how it works. So using the Architect Trailhead community is certainly a starting point, because it includes like a scoring card. It's certainly not as detailed as the scoring cards the judges are using for the exam, but that's a good starting point. You have Andrew Hart from Own Backup now publishing a monthly scenario on CTA202.com, which, by the way, is a fabulous name. I should have actually gotten this domain before him, but he caught me there now. So definitely check out CTA202.com for fresh scenarios. There are recordings on YouTube out there. We are actually going to start doing some commentary on YouTube. So me getting together with another CTA and really discussing the scenarios that are flowing out there to kind of share our thought process. What are the things that come to mind? Because I think that what happens very often with someone processing those scenarios, they get overwhelmed by the amount of information, and they haven't really refined their thought process yet. The thing about the CTA exam itself is the scenarios are very big, very complex, and artificial in a sense. You never get a fully fleshed out business case with like 10 pages that you have to solve in 3 hours. So you need to have a very clear thought process of how you're tackling that, and that's something that requires experience, expertise, and practice over time. So we kind of want to make this accessible. There are study groups out there. So even if you're buddying up with someone else, it makes sense to join a wider study group to get the necessary exposure. And definitely reach out to a CTA to work with you. And it's not necessarily going to be me. You can reach out to a lot of them. We are also very busy, so to say, as a CTA. It's not that you have half the day free, but they can certainly also bring the challenge to the table. When I do QAs with my guys, they're like, "My God, hey, you're asking us the nastiest questions," because I kind of drill down and I go like 2 or 3 levels deeper to push them into the right direction. Something that is not necessarily happening in the beginning when you're teaming up with someone else, because they want to be nice. They don't really want to give you the nasty questions, but that's exactly what you need. And as for they're meeting up every morning at 7 a.m. Yeah, I mean, we had last week, or like in the last month, 5 CTIs passing, the exam. Like everyone that sat the exam passed. But the reason why all of them passed is because they have done the work. You're not going to become a CTA by just sitting around and crossing your fingers. You have to show up every working day. Maybe not Sundays. Sundays should be family day, but it's about determination and commitment, as it is with everything that's worth in life, you know.
Is that what they did? So the 5 that passed recently, they were part of like a core, like they were the 5 that were going through at that period of time, but they were collaborating outside of the core sessions with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like that's a concept that we started. So when you start with us, you're part of a cohort, and within that cohort, you get accountability partners assigned. But since we have a Slack community, we also encourage people to kind of team up outside of the cohort, outside of their accountability partnership. So that's kind of how those 4 came together. You know, and the recently passed 5, they've also collaborated because they've been part of different cohorts. Yeah. So collaboration is key to the success.
Do you ever
support of your family?
Yeah, because we speak to people about the commitment it takes away from your family as well. And do you ever find anyone that maybe comes through the course and just doesn't put the effort in?
Yeah, plenty.
Really?
It's really, yeah, I'm not kidding you, because I think people they just don't comprehend the challenge that is ahead and what's their starting point. I'm trying to set a realistic scene, you know, but yeah, some people are just not putting in the effort, trying to rush through, and they are somewhat oblivious to to clear messages. On the other hand, you also have sometimes people that start the process, maybe with me or maybe on their own, and they get dragged into critical projects. They have like family situations they need to attend to. Especially, we see that now with our Indian colleagues and really the disaster of COVID in India. I mean, like, that's fair enough, you know. Trying to prepare and study while caring for your family in those times is certainly a challenge, and absolutely understandable to put it on hold.
Sure.
And some people just go back to the drawing board and it's like, okay, I need to revise my plan because I've realized the gap that I have. So I need to probably put more time in than necessary. And I think that's important for everybody to acknowledge, that your career is not necessarily something that you can just sprint through, you know, like, oh, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do a trial. No, that's not career progression. Career progression takes time to reflect, to plan, to execute, and sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it takes less time. So the value of something is not determined by how quickly you achieve it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good message.
No. But hey, listen, I have a question for you around value, because I mean, I see crazy salaries coming up in the market. Like, do you think that is something sustainable?
I don't want people to think I'm not all for people earning lots of money, because I am. Like, I absolutely want people to be paid, you know, handsomely, and everyone to you know, be comfortable and absolutely everything like that. I think the problem we have is, at some point, this will the rise of the Salesforce salaries and rates and things, it will become a talking point where companies will be like, well, if we go with Salesforce over Dynamics or another platform, what we have to bear in mind is the salaries are 30% higher than if we go here. So it's the running costs of the platform that and at some point that becomes a real issue, because if you've got, you know, Salesforce developers asking for, you know, money not far away from $200,000 a year in some cases, and then you've got CTOs.
Wait. Sorry, what currency is that? Australian dollars,
Aussie dollars. And I'm not suggesting everyone.
UAD. Holy shit! Okay, that's a lot of money for someone.
Well, yeah, and I'm not suggesting everyone asks that, but you know, we get people saying, well, for me to move, it has to be 200K, or and again, the message I want to be clear is that isn't the consistent salary we're seeing for Salesforce developers. That's a really high expectation. But the reason I use that figure is because recently I saw a job advert for a CTO for a fintech company in Sydney. I don't know who the company was. I just saw the advert, and it was paying like 220 or 210 or something like that, right? So how can that person then hire Salesforce developers underneath them if they ever did need Salesforce developers, or if Salesforce was the platform they were using. How could they hire developers at 200K? Like they couldn't, right? So that's where the problem is. If the salaries are growing at the extent they are, and they're so far ahead now, my understanding of some of the other development roles out there, it just will get to a point where it's not sustainable. And I think the partners are really starting to feel that. Like, I've spoken to a number of consulting partners, and they're like, well, the problem we have is if we say no to these salaries, someone else will say yes.
Of course.
And then we lose out on
cycle.
talent. So it's like, so at what point if everyone says no, is that the only way that will kind of bring down the salaries to a level that is more sustainable? And then also my point is, your salary is should align to the value you add, right? So if you're the best developer in the world, then ask for all the money in the world, right? Like if you're really a real
10x.
top 10x developer, then you've got every right. But just because Salesforce salaries have gone up, if you're not a great developer, then you have no right to be earning the salary that is being paid to the best developer, because you don't bring that value. You don't have the knowledge, you don't have the skill set. So just by your job title being Salesforce developer doesn't mean that you should be positioning yourself as the most expensive in the market. And I think people just need to understand that if you are going for those salaries, then the expectation on you is going to be really high. So that's my point. I think you need to be able to hit the ground running and deliver value, in line with that. A company is looking for a return on their investment when they're hiring someone into a role. And if that return on investment isn't as great, or there is no return on investment, then that's when we have a problem.
Absolutely. I'm really shocked by those numbers, dude. Like I just did the math wow.
I would say on average, like a senior developer is probably earning like 150 to 160 plus super in the market in Australia, depending on where you are, right? So that's a really good, solid senior developer, probably comfortable with a bit more than just Apex, and probably has a decent amount of JavaScript experience that they've kind of brought into, might be happy doing some other programming stuff as well, might know a bit about AWS. Someone that's really solid is going to be earning 150, 160, but we do get people that say, right, I want 200K. But it's just, I'm all for people earning well, but there has to be a value assigned to that kind of earning.
It's crazy, but you brought up an interesting point where you said, hey, does everybody have to start saying no in order for the salaries to kind of level in? And in economics, there is a saying like, rationality of the individual leads to group irrationality, which kind of means, it makes sense for you as a company to pay that salary because it can contribute to your bottom line, but it starts introducing this vicious cycle of salaries going up. And I said, hey, I've done the math, so I just kind of looked into 200,000 Australian dollars. That if you kind of look at the utility over the year, that's 250 working days on average. At least that's what we use in Europe. That's $800 per working day throughout the year, and that doesn't even cover like social security expense. That's a concept you guys have in Australia, like operational expense. That's madness. I mean, how much are they charging for a developer in Australia for the day?
Like a professional services company, I mean, and this is another thing, right? So we have so contractors will earn more than that. So like a contractor to themselves is probably picking up like a good senior Salesforce developer is probably picking up $900 a day, maybe $1,000 a day. And then, so we'll have some partners that come to us and say, right, we're looking for a senior developer. How much is that going to cost? And when I put our margin on top, and then we have payroll tax, insurances, things like that, the charge rate is close to what they're charged. They're not then comfortable paying it because they're like, well, we need to make a margin on this. It's definitely interesting. What would a good developer pick up back in the day when you were when you were back doing the hands-on stuff in London? Oh, you were never in. Were you in London at the time? Yeah, you moved to London for tequila, didn't you?
Exactly, I did. So let me do the math. And it was, wait a second, I was a senior consultant, like working as a TA/senior developer. I made 80,000 pounds in Australian dollars, which was 145,000 Australian dollars. But keep in mind, like I was senior level. I would be sent to some of our key accounts to deliver workshops and so that was significant amount of responsibility.
Yeah, and you were like a very good, like you were at the top of your game, right? You've gone on to be a CTA, like you, and I'm sure you were adding a lot of value at that level.
Yeah.
And my issue with some salaries is like, well, my friend earns that, so that's how much I want, or well, I heard this, how much this person's earning, or I saw that the job advert says $900 a day, so I want 900, but you've got like, you've got nowhere near the level of experience that salary should be earning. So that's the challenge.
But so we spoke about companies kind of starting to face a challenge to really pay for those kind of salaries. So if I'm a company that doesn't feel comfortable paying that kind of salary but is still interested to attract top talent, what do I need to do to be competitive?
It's hard. Like you are going to lose out on a lot of top talent if you can't pay what the market's paying. It's just like, and I think like people don't realize that. They just think, oh, it's I had someone say to me recently, oh, well, COVID, right? Surely there's loads of Salesforce talent on the market because of COVID. So surely you can find people easily for us. And I was like, you're so out of sync with the market. Like there are so few people in Australia in certain industries. Yes, but in the Salesforce world, so few people like lost jobs because of COVID, and that there's I should say there were some, but not like a mass number of people. So people like expecting to be able to pay small salaries are just like not going to get talent. So you will lose out on a lot of people by not paying market rate. But I think being able to offer interesting projects is always like people sometimes will take a hit on salary if they're going to learn a lot. And if they're going to be given an environment where they can really thrive and push on to the next level. So I think I think working with people like yourselves gives companies a competitive edge. And actually being able to say, like, we actually have had someone that's gone through a training program and achieved this, rather than just saying, we've got a CTA training program internally, or we're looking to put one in place, or we'll pay for some training budgets and things like that. I think if you can really clearly articulate what that will look like for that person. And then obviously the other big one is flexibility right now. Like people don't want to have to travel to the office, or we're seeing some companies hiring talent in Sydney from Melbourne and looking in Brisbane for talent when they can't find people locally. So I think that's a bit different as well now. Like people are keen for that. But yeah, I think it's all about, can you articulate what someone is going to actually work on in your environment? Like what's so great about working there compared to all of the other companies that are hiring? And it's interesting because so few companies can answer that question.
Yeah.
And everyone just looks at you blankly like, oh, can you tell us what we should say? It's like, well, no, like I can't, but you need to be able to sell this business to people in front of you in an interview.
It's pretty much like a sales pitch for your own company, which I think a lot of people are still uncomfortable with when it comes to hiring talent. You have to position yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
But let's take this concept of an environment that allows you to thrive apart. What could this look like?
So an opportunity that enables you to thrive.
Yeah,
I think really, like, everyone's different. So everyone has, like, thriving for me is different from thriving for you. So I think it's actually trying to understand the person and what thriving means to them, but what they actually want to achieve. I think being involved in the Salesforce ecosystem, and like I've evolved to actually really just enjoying helping people on their journey, and trying to add as much value as I can, and just working with inspirational people really drives me and motivates me. So for me, like I'm not going to close down Talent Hub or anything like that, but one of the things that would excite me would be like to be in a startup environment, working on a product, not necessarily a Salesforce product, but building a product with really, really smart people where I can just, work day to day with people that are technology minded, I think, because that now has quite excited me working in this world.
Yeah.
The idea of building something that everyone in the world could use, right, would be amazing. Or maybe not everyone in the world. I'm not going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, but something like that, right, is cool. And I feel like going into that environment would really excite me. But that might not excite someone else who wants to play it safe and just needs to be able to get home to feed their family and like do that side of work. So I think it's really important to actually understand the person in front of you and what thriving means, because thriving could mean always being able to pick up your children from school and have that those responsibilities ticked every single day for you. So yeah, I think everyone's different. Like your personality, you would thrive in a different way from me. And what makes you thrive?
I will quote Daniel Pink, and what a person needs to thrive, it comes down to autonomy, purpose, and mastery. So autonomy in a sense of given the freedom to develop within a framework. I kind of use that term when I was doing consulting, and everybody says, oh, we need to have the opportunity to do what we need. No, you need to have freedom within a framework, like having clear guidelines, but giving you within those guidelines the opportunity to really evolve and kind of adapt. Purpose, okay, why are we in fact doing that? Making shitloads of money is a nice bonus nowadays, but I think a lot of people have kind of grown tired of that. Nobody will say, I don't want to earn money, but as you said, hey, I want to be kind of involved in technology projects. I want to help people. That's the kind of purpose that people are looking for, because in our postmodern society, we're lacking purpose. So we're trying to find it in the work that we're doing. And I think it's necessary. And mastery, in a sense, to give people really the environment that helps them to refine and master their skills that are necessary. And I think here what's important to understand is, for a developer to really master their craft, it's not only about how many different coding languages can you work in, how many different concepts do you have, like can you develop in Lightning, or are you still kind of stuck in Visualforce? But it's also about what are the skills that make a truly masterful developer. And those are also some of the human skills. It's like communication, it is creative problem solving, it is empathy to an extent also. So I think as a company, looking beyond the pure technical definition of a job role is what can contribute to such an environment.
I saw a post on Twitter. I keep reading Twitter, like I said, and I saw a post that was like, a developer interview is basically seeing how much you agree with what the interviewer believes. And it's interesting, right? Because it's like, well, there are so many different ways to code and different approaches and things like that, but the person that's interviewing you has an approach themselves.
Yeah.
So they're asking you questions and expecting you to answer in the way that they would do it. And it's like, you're just hiring more people that think like you. And then like, where does all the creativity go, and the freedom and the ability for people to come in and thrive and to really, it's it's interesting, because I think that's probably an issue bigger than just like developers, right? But the whole interview process, you're just looking for people like that are similar to you or think like you, and actually the people that you really want to hire are probably the ones that don't.
Everybody is shouting from the roofs, we are diverse, but then it's a bunch of white dudes sitting in a room,
Did you, so when was the last time you because you're obviously you're remote right now, right? You're not working from an office right now, and every time I speak to you, you have a certain level of freedom. How do you feel about working in offices? And because I think you've probably read that quote, the CEO of WeWork saying that your most inspired employees are the ones that want to come back into the office, and the ones that aren't inspired are the ones that want to work from home. But for me, I like thriving. For me, is being able to work from home and like being comfortable in my environment. And because I would say although I just work with Gemma and we work great together, I'm quite introverted, and I just focus so much on my own work. So working remotely is good and bad for me. How do you find that? Like, do you have you always been a big, because you're kind of like a bit of a digital nomad, I guess people would call you, in the way that you're you run your business from all over the world with people all over the world, and you rarely need to be in front of them, right?
I mean, my friends call me Peter Pan, so so there's some truth to that term, and I've in fact rented a co-working space, so there has been some change, yes, but it was necessary for the product that I'm currently working on. But anyway, so coming to your question, I think you need to be really at your best. I think you need to have both options and to tap into either option depending on what is necessary. I got my fair share of office experience, so to say, in my career. I think the traditional corporate offices are just, there's no space for creativity, so to say. You know, like you have those cubicles, you have like rows, it's loud and noisy. You have those hipster office spaces with like beanbags, but it's goddamn noisy because you're cramping so many people in to kind of make this fly. It's also not necessarily my favorite environment, but having the opportunity to take off your noise cancelling headphones, which are a necessity, and just walking over to someone and say, hey, listen, first of all, checking if they're available and if you can interrupt them, but like having the opportunity to reach out to them, getting some external perspective, getting some inspiration is definitely important. And you know, regardless of how much I dislike the corporate offices I was working from, I think having the opportunity to sit together with your team in a room and really nailing things out is invaluable. So I don't think it's a sensible solution to get rid of the office entirely, but having it more as a place to connect, and bring people together. Because if you look into Amazon, Facebook, Google, and so on, they're setting up big office spaces in New York and other big cities. Because first of all, office spaces are really cheap at the moment, and second of all, they recognize the value of creating those spaces for the teams to come together and to collaborate.
What you're saying is they're renting out more space. They're taking more space.
They're taking out more space. It's unexpected, but that's what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting because like the press would have you believe otherwise, right? Facebook have said everyone can work from home indefinitely and all this stuff, but yeah, I think what you're saying is right. It's the option, and I've discussed this with my wife recently. Like for my company, having that option it's not like either we have to be all in or all out, because we're so small. Like, there's no real value in having an office sat there if we're not ever using it. And if there's only two of us, then there's only ever going to be one of us in the office or two. And if there's one, then there's no point in us having the office. But I think when you're bigger, then there is definitely that having the option is great, because you can always have a few people in there, even if not everyone's in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So a friend of mine is in fact chief designer at Microsoft, and I was talking with him, and he was like, I really miss that commute. And I was like, what is he talking about? So when I got this co-working space here, I kind of realized it, because commuting to the office or to the space where you're working, I'm not talking about like putting on your boxer shorts, getting out of bed and kind of walking over to your desk. That's not a commute, but having this clear separation. Oh, I'm leaving home, I'm leaving my private space to now enter the professional space. Definitely has a significant value, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, I've got one question for you before we go, and I know obviously you've had a lot of success with CTAs recently, but what's new with the brand, the business, the products you're working on? Like, what's exciting you at the minute?
I think I'm excited about our new design. It's kind of in the making. I've started giving some sneak peeks on LinkedIn with the CTA announcement of those 5 people. No, but it's kind of part of a bigger overhaul of our brand. We kind of started with CTA coaching, which was my exit from the traditional consulting world. But we spoke about this earlier, you know, like when you're a senior developer, your craft not only consists of how well you can code, but all of those human skills around it. And that's kind of what I'm focusing on now. You've been part of the communication bootcamp pilot last year. We have taken it certainly to the next level. It took me a little bit longer than I wanted to, but we got the first large GSI in the US, in fact, and rolling into the program and sending pretty much the entire architecture practice to go through that kind of program. So that's where I'm personally heading. I'm kind of focusing less on Salesforce and focusing more on technologists as in the entirety, you know, like AWS, SAP, whatsoever. So it's really, how can I help people working in technology mastering their craft by focusing on human skills, so communication, problem solving, imagination. There's a lot of interesting stuff coming up, and I'm super excited about that.
Will we ever see you back on the tools, do you think?
Huh?
Will we ever see you back on the tools, back in consulting?
Nope. No, I can't. No. I've done so many projects that I can say it's the same shit, different label. You know, I like solving technical problems, you know, but I've personally gotten to a point where I grew tired of all the political navigation aspects. You know, I spend too much energy on that, and even so, I'm now training people to help them navigate those spaces better. I don't feel like it's my place anymore.
And do you, so when you say you like solving technical, I know I said I only had one question for you there, but do you get to see them? Like, do you, obviously you work through and you're doing the mocks and stuff, but how regularly do you actually get to see a problem that maybe a customer of one of your trainees or like one of your friends, like, are you still seeing and helping solve problems just out of curiosity and because you're still interested?
Yeah, I mean, so what my kind of exposure is I have a couple of friends that I'm still advising on some of their projects, but it's more on a friendship basis. So I'm not getting paid for that, and that's why I wouldn't call it consulting because I can stand on the sidelines.
Sure.
The other thing is what I in fact do is I come up with scenarios, and I have to build those scenarios before I can put it in front of someone, because if it doesn't work, you can't make it fly. So there's certainly some technical problems that I'm still tackling that are sometimes even more complex than the stuff that I have done in my real projects. And I'm working on a product it's like a micro-learning management system to kind of deliver and deploy all the training courses we're offering. So there's still some technical challenges in my life.
Yeah, nice. Well, always a pleasure to catch up, and thank you for asking me the questions this time.
No, of course, it was good.
Yeah,
Thank
enjoyed
you very
it.
much.
Thank you.
Cheers.